that damn fourth Chaos Emerald.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in with us for another episode of the RetroAchievements Podcast, where we cover a variety of genres, topics, and discuss the bits and bytes of yesteryear. They say putting 1,000 monkeys in a room with a typewriter will create Shakespeare with enough time. But what if we could do better? What if we put a ton of people with hyperfocus abilities in a room dedicated to improving the experience of RA? Immediately you would have attention to detail and an acumen for clarity and understanding. Shortly thereafter, structure would follow. If the pen is truly mightier than the sword, a battle-ready army stands in the wings in the form of the writing team, and with every army needing a general, a leader steps forth with quality, acumen, and a disposition to strive for what's right. For exactly that reason, I have my guest here tonight, Ep22, to dive in on the writing team and a little bit about themselves and what it means to contribute to RA. Ep22, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Time Crush, thank you for having me. Hello, it's Ep22. You may know me as the hamster, of course, as always. I'm the head of the writing team for RA. I also manage the RA guides for RetroAchievements as well. And of course, I also help with RA news, try to help organize it, and yeah, just do a lot of different stuff on RA.
It's fantastic to have you here, Nep. It's somebody I've interacted with several times. I joined, I would say, early 2022, and you have been somebody who's been very constant in the community since I've been on day one. You are somebody who has a good nature, a good attitude. You interact with fresh-faced new users. You interact with old veterans. You take the time for basically everybody, and it's a respectable quality. I kind of wanted to start broad. RA is such a niche community, especially when I found it. I can't imagine what it would be back in 2020.
That's actually a very good question, because I'm going to give you a big spoiler twist right now.
Oh.
I have actually been on the site since 2015, on an old account.
Holy shit! Alright.
The old account is a username that I don't really use anymore because it's my family name. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go to a different account. And I also haven't been too active on that account. I really started being active on this account in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I found the site in 2015, and I don't remember exactly how I found it. I believe it was something like I was just looking for retro games, and somehow it ended up in Google, and I was like, hey, let's check this out, and hey, somehow I'm here.
Hey, it ends up working out. Either way, since you've been here since 2020 or 2015, you've been a great representation. What did it look like back in 2015? What was the atmosphere? How were things in the contribution sense? You're very active now, but I could be wrong. I don't think Discord was as prevalent as it was now as it was in 2015, but how did the web community look? How did you interact? How did you hold that same ham-ha standard that you still do today?
Yeah, that's correct. Back in 2015, we didn't really have a Discord. It was just a site. We mostly used the site to communicate with each other, have the forum. I did interact a few times. I wasn't really that active back then. Although, funnily enough, my first RA guide goes as far back as 2015.
Wow.
Which is also a massive spoiler twist that nobody really knows about.
All right. I want to dig in on that a little bit here. What was that guide in 2015? What did an RA guide look like in 2015 compared to now?
That guide was for Breath of Fire, which is a set that has been active, I believe, since 2015, and it was just a very comprehensive set for that game, for Breath of Fire on the SNES.
Okay.
It has a lot of secrets, so I was like, this could probably benefit from showing people into a direction like, hey, this item, you can find it here, or you can find it there. It's not really something you would find in a game facts guide, but something you would find more like in a dedicated achievement guide.
Now, if my memory's serving me right, with the last episode having Mr. O on, the news team wasn't established quite yet, so RA guides weren't like a monthly featured thing. They had their own section, or what did that look like?
Yeah, that's correct. When I made that guide, the community was a lot smaller, so to say. Guides weren't really on the radar, so I've suggested it a few times like, hey, we should have RA guides, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember interacting with a few people, and they were like, yeah, that's pretty cool, but we are so small right now, we have other priorities, like getting more consoles, getting more functionality and all that. So it never really took off back then. And when I came back to the site in 2020, there was a bit of movement, so we had the GitHub, we had the RA News. And that's basically when I hopped on and was like, yeah, I can do this.
So how long of a gap would you say that you took in your RA career between usernames? It sounds like there might have been a little bit of a period for a couple of years where you kind of weren't in the picture.
Yeah, I would say that was about like 3 to 4 years.
Okay, so any just life pulled you away, weren't interested. What's the reasoning?
I was a bit immature. So we had a set for Pokemon Yellow, and this was in a different time. This was like the Wild West of Retro Achievements.
Sure.
Revisions weren't really announced. They happened. They didn't really have a vote. There wasn't quality control. And I was done with Pokemon Yellow. That was a fun set. I had it mastered. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, a revision. And I was like, what?
Uh-oh.
Where are my achievements? What did I do?
Uh-oh.
And that was basically the moment like, okay, yeah, I'll take a break.
It's totally understandable. I mean, many of us were young and dumb and full of fire, so it was one of those things that, like, reacted to something that, hey, 5 years on, I'm going to come back, take a second look. Turns out this place wasn't so bad after all. But I can definitely understand that if you put the time to master something and then you suddenly lose it, that's going to feel like a fucking rug pulled out from under you.
Yeah, exactly. And nowadays I have a great appreciation for revisions because he had so much to a set, but back then I just didn't understand, like, why did this happen? What did I do wrong? Why me?
I think Wild West is a great way to describe it because they were still finding their foundation. They were still trying to find their footing. RA as a whole was still trying to carve out a name for what, a good retro achievement meant. And I honestly think we're still trying to do that. There's a lot of people out there with conflicting opinions. There's a lot of people out there with different dev visions. And some of that is what makes us great. You can have different sets that are tailored around that dev. I know some people will actually seek out a dev should they decide to dev a game, even if it's outside of the genre that they'd normally play, just because they know from that dev is a set that's worth playing. So I can appreciate moving away from the Wild West days, and I can appreciate that there's still a bit of ways to go. But I do want to still dive in a little bit on NEP from a broader perspective. I want to jump in on the person. I want to understand who you are. I know you're from the Netherlands. I know you're a little bit of an RPG gamer. What does NEP like to do when they're not trying to get some achievements? What does NEP like to do in their leisure time when they're not worried about pumping up that score?
So funnily enough, as the writing team leader, my activities outside of Retro Achievements also usually come down to writing. I like reviewing games a lot. Because I have a very bad memory and I like to look back on games like, hey, what did I actually think of this game?
Sure.
Because if you ask me like, what did you think of a game you played in 2020? I probably wouldn't be able to give you an answer. I completely forgot.
I'm right there with you.
And that's why I like writing about everything. I keep lists. I just like documenting my game journey essentially.
Okay. So you want to keep track of things. I'm right there with you with a failing memory and one of those. It's just hell to keep track of stuff. Sometimes I remember what I ate, on my fucking 6th birthday, and sometimes I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday.
Yeah, that's me too.
I can definitely understand wanting to keep a track record of what you've played and what you thought of them, because years down the line, this might be a valuable piece of information. Kind of leads me into my next question. Retro Achievements isn't the only community that you're a member of or a representation. Not only do you have the writing team, and not only are you a very active and contributing member of the Discord server here, you got another website that's pretty goddamn popular, if I do say so myself. Tell us a little bit about that.
Wait, so this is my time to shine,
This is your time to shine.
I am allowed to do it? Oh,
you're allowed to do it.
Alright, yeah. So this is actually quite funny. We of course have the Dutch channel in the Retro Achievements Discord. On a random day, in a random year, a user came into our Discord and was like, hey, this site is cool. We want to have this integrated on our own site. How does it work? And I gave them an explanation like, hey, you have to do this and that. And I was like, what do you need it for? Oh, we have a backlog site. And I've been very active on backlog sites in the past, like Backloggery, Backlogged, but none of them really scratched that itch. Especially Backloggery, they've been a bit archaic to me. I couldn't really do what I wanted to do there. So I checked this out, and I made an account, I added my games, and I was stuck there. And since I was also the person who knew about Retro Achievements, I decided like, hey, let me help you guys out. Maybe I can do something for you guys. And yeah, that kind of spiraled down into me constantly bragging about Infinite Backlog, how good of a site it is, the hit backlog tracking site. with so many options like challenges and reviews and collections and all that stuff. Yeah, that happened.
Insert GIF here, like it has to be used.
Insert GIF here.
Yep. It was one of those things that, while researching you for having you on for the episode, I found really interesting. Infinite Backlog is known by so many people worldwide. It's a massive cultural zeitgeist in achievements, in completing, in beating. And it's interesting to see the worlds kind of meld between RA and Infinite Backlog. I would say RA isn't nothing to balk at. We aren't a small community per se. But we definitely aren't at the level where we're talked about just, we don't have GIFs made about us, for Christ's sake.
Are you sure about that? I remember a very specific GIF.
I don't remember not being here or whatever that Saul GIF was. I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember that one.
But either way, so you got involved with Infinite Backlog, you bridged community ties there, you didn't seem to pose it as a difficult situation. I asked one of these things about bridging more community gaps. I think this could be a very big, let's call it a venue for traffic. If we start, instead of trying to just promote ourselves, but instead trying to promote ourselves within communities that are like-minded, it could extend the reach and our registered users and ultimately our contributions and our enjoyment through the roof. These registered users will, a good percentile will become devs, and a good percentile of those that come from these associated communities should have a good idea of what an achievement means. You would think that this results in a very high quality product. Would you agree that extending the reach out to extraneous communities could ultimately provide a good venue of traffic?
Yeah, I absolutely do agree with that. I think the creating of bridges is a very valuable asset to have and also very easy to do. Or at least, well, that of course depends on whatever you do. But I would say that it's very valuable. I know a few members who were on Infinite Backlog who realized this is RetroAchievements. And they came to RetroAchievements. I believe some of them are even dev right now.
Oh.
Yeah, they came from Infinite Backlog just to check it out because they saw it there. And likewise, we get a lot of people from RetroAchievements to Infinite Backlog. It's like the communities overlap because we have a very similar mindset. We want to complete games and we want to keep track of it.
Absolutely. I mean, just in preparation for this episode, I ended up registering finally for an Infinite Backlog account.
Finally, we got another one.
Finally! Yep, you got another one. But it's one of those things, already right away, I'm seeing a lot of features, a lot of integration. They, too, are trying to bridge communities. They are already capitalizing on this, let's call it an opportunity. Because there's a lot of room in between that if you bridge these gaps, the Venn diagram overlaps quite a damn bit, as you were saying.
Yeah, it's just, we also noticed that with the beaten functionality on RetroAchievements that happened last year, a lot of people don't really care about mastering games that much. They're fine with just beating it or going for in-game completion. And that's also where backlogs come in clutch, because they are your own personal space where you can just select, hey, I've beaten that game. I want to set it to beaten because I've done that. And everyone's happy in the world. That's all we need.
I mean, honestly, it's a great mentality to have. I do think there's a lot more, I'm going to say it, there's a lot more meat on this bone. If it's an avenue we decide to chase down, I think cross-community communication, CCC, could be something that brings a lot of value to everybody involved. We still got a lot more to dive in on. We still have Nepke here. We're trying to figure out a little bit more about them. We want to dive in on the writing team. We want to dive in on what it means to be a member here at RA at the whole. We want to know what it means to contribute to the writing team. But we're going to do all that right after we get back.
Okay, look, we both said a lot of things that you're going to... But I think we can put our differences... for silence.
You monster.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the RetroAchievements Podcast. We just covered a little bit on Nepke and how they've been around since 2015. The site has changed dramatically since they've been involved. Covered a little bit on their Infinite Backlog experience, a little bit on how they've contributed and bridged communities, but we've still got a lot more to dive in on. Specifically, I wanted to focus in right now on the writing team. I imagine this was something that you contributed to a little bit before you came the lead, but you are right now the lead of said team. How did that come to be? Talk to me about the writing team. What does that look like?
Yeah, that is correct. I joined the writing team, I believe, in 2021. And this was at a time that nobody really knew what the writing team exactly was. It existed like a few years before I joined. It was created by Sting at the time. When I joined, you could say that nobody really knew what was going on with the writing team. A lot of people assumed like, oh, the writing team is the one who does the RA news, which is not true. They are the team that fixes the typos, which is also partially untrue because writers did not have site access, so we couldn't actually do anything.
Oh.
So this was at the time when I joined that we had a very small team. We didn't have any developers. So when I joined, there wasn't really a lot that I could do at the time. And this is something that has frustrated me over the years because I am someone with a very high sense of responsibility. And I was just looking at the writing channel we had at the time where people would report typos. And I couldn't really do anything about them. And that annoyed me quite heavily. It's like sitting at home, being an office worker, 9 to 5. You're almost done with work and your boss asks you to make a rocket. And that's not your job. And I was just sitting there like, I cannot do anything about this. And for a very long while, this just kept going. I just couldn't do anything. I was just sitting there like, if people would come for advice, I would help them. But yeah, that was the extent of my work. So I was just a regular member like any other. And that would change a few years later because I would take the initiative like, hey, we need to do something about this because this cannot go on. These people come here for help. They need help. We should help them. So what I did at first was I created a spreadsheet with all of the requests. I put them all in there. And I was like, okay, we'll go reach out to a dev, beg for them to help us. Like, please do this. We have a lot of spreadsheet. We need your help. Please help us.
God, that's difficult. God.
Yeah, that was very difficult. And yeah, that kind of spiraled into me just doing a lot of stuff because I noticed that if I wanted to see change, I had to be that change.
Absolutely.
That led to us eventually getting a forum, which was way more orderly because I hate working in chaos. I cannot see what's going on. Like, oh no, there's so many messages. It's a mess. Help.
Right, so there's been 30 posts since I've last checked. Oh God.
Yeah, exactly. So eventually we created a forum. And yeah, like I said, I noticed that if I just ask like, hey, can this be done? Or ask other team members or even members from the staff or somewhere else like, hey, can we get this done? Then yeah, we can get this done. We should just have someone who takes the initiative. And that's basically me. I guess that's how I became the writing leader, even though I initially didn't really see myself as a leader because I wasn't the oldest member. And I also wouldn't consider myself really the best at the language because, of course, I am Dutch, as stated earlier. It's not my first language, although I would say I'm pretty okay at it.
I mean, you're well enough to have on the podcast. Don't sell yourself short there, bud.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah, we got a lot of users who ended up asking me like, hey, Nipiki, what is your team? How do I join the team? And I was like, but I'm just a member. I don't know.
How do I join your team? Oh, God. No, that was actually something I was going to lead into later in the episode, but we might as well dive in now. The writing team seems pretty accessible from a new user standpoint. It was something I submitted an RA news column to, and I noticed the writing team was the one that was tagged in to help kind of edit and proofread and make sure the formatting was good. So it seems like the writing team is one of those things that even if you aren't a developer, as you mentioned, you didn't have any developers on the team, even if you aren't somebody who's creating these sets, if you have a knack for, wanting to be a little bit structured, precise, wanting to use that flourish of English language, you could join the writing team pretty easily. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that was also my initial thoughts on what I'm going to do for RA, because at one time I was like, I want to contribute to the community because it does so much for me, so I want to do something back.
Sure.
So I reached out to RA News, I reached out to the writing team, like, I want to help out because I didn't really see developing as something that I would do. I didn't really have the time and probably also not the interest, which is kind of ironic because I'm probably now more busy than ever, but that's besides the point.
I was going to say, I noticed you had the developer role there, bud. No.
Yeah, probably more busy than ever with all of the work that I do for our news and writing team, but that's besides the point, yeah.
All in good fun.
But yeah, that was my thought. Like, I don't have to be a developer to contribute to the community, and that's what I would say to everyone. And you can also attest to that, like, as a playtester and as the podcast host. There is so much you can do for the community without becoming a developer.
Absolutely. It's one of those things I've tried to rein through on a few different episodes. There's so many ways to contribute to this community. If you have any want or a vision or something that you think could actually be of value, there's nobody stopping you from putting feet to pavement and starting the run. Anybody is willing to contribute. Anybody is ready to contribute. If you have a good idea and a good effort, just get started.
Exactly.
The hardest part is just getting started. So one of the things I also noticed while I was doing a little bit of research here, you're pretty damn high ranked, Nep, especially for being your second account. Set at 267. You're definitely somebody who doesn't only participate in the side of helping the community, you also have a good bit of fun here. I notice a skew towards RPGs. I notice a skew towards maybe a little bit of platformers. Talk to me about what Nep does when they just want to kind of unwind, when they're not worried about their duties at RA, when they're just playing some games, they want to have some fun. What does that look like?
I usually circulate between 3 different genres, those being JRPGs, platformers and Metroidvanias, and racing games.
Okay, racing games. That's the curveball.
Yeah, so racing games as well. I really like them, and they're just really comfy to play. I can just pick up a game, do a few races, and have a lot of fun, get a few achievements, and then move on to something else. That's the 3 genres I basically circulate between, with sometimes another, like action adventures, all that. So yeah, they're the genres I'm most comfortable with, and RA has a lot of them because these genres have been around for like forever. And platforms especially are pretty popular on RetroAchievements, so that they're pretty easy for me to pick up and play and just have fun with.
Absolutely, and being able to unwind with something just kind of casual and leisurely like that is very valuable.
Exactly.
Being at 267 though, are you concerned about your rank? Is that something you consider, or is it just something that's kind of came naturally?
It's actually quite funny because this year I had the motivation like I'm going to become top 300.
Uh-oh.
It was my goal for this year and I apparently already crushed it out of the park, so now I need a different goal.
You're all set. You achieved that. Anything you started to zero in on to get those points jacked up there? What were you really looking at? Or were you still playing those same kind of genres you loved, but just doing it a little bit more seriously?
Yeah, this also conveniently goes back to Infinite Backlog with the challenges where we play like entire series to do for a reward. And that's also what I've been doing this past year.
Oh, hold on. I'm going to interrupt you there. For people not familiar with Infinite Backlog, which are myself and I'm sure a good handful of our listeners, the website awards you for completing a whole series of games. Say if you complete the classic Mega Man series, you'll get a good chunk.
Yeah, that's correct. If you beat like every single classic Mega Man game, you get a badge for your profile, you get a wallpaper, a title.
Wow!
Just a bunch of rewards to give you like that feeling like, hey, I did this and I got rewarded for it.
I am the mega fucking man. All right.
Yeah, me too. Very conveniently, because that was actually my biggest point gain for this year. Because
Oh, you have that!
I have that, exactly. Every single year I do a Mega May event for myself. During May, I only play Mega Man games. It doesn't matter if it's X, if Battle Network, Classic, whatever. And this year I had the bright idea to just go through the classic games again, and I just mastered them all within 10 days or so.
Holy shit, man. Alright, so you're doing Mr. Perfect. You're doing... Oh my... What the... God. Alright, sometimes I like to think that, like, hey, there's genres of games Time Crush can play. He's pretty good at certain things. And then I have guests on like you that are like, yeah, I did it in like 10 days, and all of them, and fuck you. And Jesus Christ, man!
Yeah, I was just bored and I had a lot of time, so I was like, yeah, let's go
You
play
were
some Mega
bored
Man.
and had a lot... You could put me in a room with nothing but Mega Man 1, and I don't know if I could even fucking beat it in a week.
Yeah,
all right.
I'm probably going to drag for a bit, so excuse me, but I was so scared of doing all games statless, and I did them all on my first try. Which was...
What the fuck? All right.
Yeah, sorry, that was my bragging moment. I am so proud of that.
Yeah, I can literally feel you wiping your shoulders off. And
Oh,
just
yeah,
flexing.
I am right now.
Goddamn. Yeah. All right, Nep, so you clearly have some latent skill in these video games. I want to kind of dive into your earlier years, though. I want to get a little bit of an introspective. I do this for a lot of my guests. Talk to me about Nep growing up. If you don't mind my asking, how old are you?
I'm 28.
Okay, so you're 28. I would say your first console in that era, it wouldn't be brand new because you were still young. We're going to say one of your first consoles was like the N64 or the PS1. Am I accurate?
It's actually a generation before that. I had the SNES.
All right.
I grew up in a family of 3 brothers. And they got the PS1, so they were like, hey, Nepiki, you can have that old console that we don't care about anymore. Jokes on them, because it's actually my favorite console ever, but...
Fuck you, the SNES is baller.
Yeah, I love the SNES. You can have the PS1, I don't care about that. Let me have fun on this.
Enjoy your triangle tits.
Exactly. What I played on there first was conveniently an RPG, which was Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, which is often seen as the black sheep in the franchise, that baby game.
Still, if that was your first experience on SNES, you're not going to have any of those, biases. You're not going to have any of those previous experiences with Final Fantasy. You're going to see this as your first entry and be like, this is fucking amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And also because we were in Europe, we didn't really have any Final Fantasies except for this one, funnily enough.
Oh, no.
This was the only one we had until Final Fantasy VII.
Wow. Whoa. You guys really didn't get anything until 7?
Yep, we didn't get anything. 7 was our first game. So when Final Fantasy 7 came out, we were like, where's 1 to 6? What's that?
You're right. What the hell is this thing? 7? All right. Goddamn.
Where are the other games?
And I'm still going to have fun with it. Well, okay. Wow. That's something I had no idea of. All right. So you heard of Mystic Quest. You played it. You enjoyed it a lot. What were some of your other earlier games?
The other earlier games, of course, is Pokemon, because conveniently I am from the exact same month and year as Pokemon, so we grew up together. We are twin brothers, Pokemon and I, Pikachu and Nepiki the hamster. Yes, that's us. And I also played a lot of, just a little bit of Mario, of course, Zelda. My favorite game of all time, Link to the Past. I've played it also as a kid, like, so many times, back to back. I beat it, I would beat it again, like, right after.
I remember Link to the Past is one of those games that definitely harkens to one of my childhood memories. I was very young, still in elementary school, and for whatever reason, I woke up fairly early that day, and I got around for school. And I normally didn't play video games in the morning. I normally woke up with just enough time to kind of get around, have a little breakfast, get out to the bus, that kind of thing. But this day I woke up maybe an hour and a half early. I don't know. I just got a lot of rest, but I woke up, got around, had my breakfast, and then I sat down at the SNES. This was still at the time where households didn't really have more than one television, so I was in the living room, sitting down on a little couch cushion thing on the floor, and I was unknowingly very close to the end of the game. I had already gotten the silver arrows, the great temple in the dark world was open. I was ready to challenge Ganon, and being a child who hadn't really beaten many games at this point in his life, I didn't recognize the final boss fight for what it was. So I go in, and I think this is just another step in the game. And I'm, waiting for the school bus to come. I still got another 40 minutes or so. I'm hanging out, I'm playing. And then the credits start to roll. I beat Ganon. And it's so impactful to little, let's just say 7 or 8 year old time crush, that I remember while the credits were rolling, I got up and went and got my mother, who was like, getting her own stuff around and lunch and whatever for her workday, and dragged her to the living room and just pointed at the TV and was like, I did it. I beat, and
what happened?
Yes. And what's amazing to me is this was a previous term. We use it so much today at RA. We use it so prevalently. Apparently way back in the day, when you beat a level, or when you beat, say, a stage, the previous generation were way more used to what were called boards. And we know that term being at RetroAchievements, but they would call levels boards. And when you beat a board, they already used the term, I mastered the board. And now here we are, 30 years later, still using the term master in the very similar context. And I just find that very interesting that despite time, despite several decades and generations of gaming hardware, pixels becoming so much more advanced, pixels being disregarded for polygons becoming so refined, that we still hold on to the term master.
Exactly.
I don't know. It's something worth thinking about. It's something worth looking into. I think it's just an interesting tidbit of the gaming world, that even back in the day where it was very rudimentary and very simple, you would master the stage 1-1 of Miss Pac-Man.
Yeah, and I would say it's also a good reflection of the current gaming landscape. Because so many indie games take inspiration from the classics. Like, we all grew up with those. We all use the term master. We sat at the TV, we beat the game, we were happy. We told to our mom, hey mom, I did it finally. That's all of us right now. The current gaming scape, we're all around the same age, I would say. Like, especially in RetroAchievements. All of the developers.
I'd agree.
And all the indie game developers, all the homebrew developers. We all share a very similar lifestyle we had back then.
I would agree.
And I think that's definitely something just no matter where you come from, like I'm from across the ocean, but we have such a similar point of view.
It's one of those things that I almost think it's going to, and God, I really hope I'm right and not calling this wrong, but I almost see us leading into another golden era of gaming. We're either going to go one of two ways. We've seen a lot of recent AAA flops. We've seen a lot of huge investments just go tits up, no money made, no anything, because they're developing for the profit. And the people at RA especially aren't going to be the people that buy, say, Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. That's nothing but a pandering game, and we can recognize that a mile away. But if so many people start to invest in these things, and so many of these things start to not make money, after the collapse comes the golden Renaissance era. That goes right back to a handful of dudes in their garage making a video game that's worth playing.
Exactly.
That goes right back to somebody who's doing something on a passion project. That is why we have such good indie titles. That is why we have such good homebrew titles. Mr. O just talked about how he is pretty much capitalizing on the homebrew scene, and I'm calling you out now, O, if you're listening to this. I need you to get on that itch.io integration. We're talking about bridging communities. This is something we need to do, my friend. But we have a lot of avenues for upgrading the gaming experience, and it's nothing to do with what the AAA road wants to take. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the passion that drives us all, and that is what makes us shine.
100%. That's why I brought up the dudes in the garage. Those were the greatest games made. It's somebody who isn't doing it for profit. They're not doing it for recognition. They're doing it because, hey, dude, this seems awesome. Wouldn't you like to play this? And then, holy shit, yeah, it ends up being awesome.
Yeah, and it comes back to RA as well. We don't do this for money. We don't do this for fame. We just want to make games for other people. Like, hey, you can play our achievement sets. Or, hey, have you ever heard of this game? We bring it up again so to give it some new life. Like, hey, have you ever heard of this random SNES game from 1994 that only came out in Australia or something? I don't know.
It's a beautiful thing, honestly. I've found so many games that I would have been never exposed to and have been thrilled to play because of RA. Like I said, I only joined in 2022, but I seriously underestimated the value that this platform could provide. Much like others who come in, I wanted to play my Mega Man X, I wanted to play my Link to the Past, I wanted to play my Super Mario World, I wanted to play the classics. But then after getting over those and doing that kind of thing for a little bit, I realized there's a lot more to offer in this community if you just take a second and look around. It's kind of what I wanted to dig in on next. You're a developer listed. You're somebody who works on games. You're somebody who wants to create those experiences for other players and somebody who wants to see others enjoy the vision they have in mind. But we're going to get back to that when we get back on Retro Achievements Podcast.
I'm glad you're back.
Don't be so impatient. Settle down.
That's the way it's done.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Retro Achievements Podcast. Retro Achievements Podcast at gmail.com for all listener mail. Please feel free to send in those suggestions, those comments, those questions that could be read out on air. We've been here with Nepiki. We've discussed their commitment in the RA community. We've discussed their involvement in the writing team. We've discussed how they got a little bit experience in 2015, but chose to extend that to 2020. You have the developer title. You aren't actually developing games. This is something you kind of revealed to me, but it was something awarded to you. It's interesting to kind of dive in on. It was almost granted out of need of necessity. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, this was what I mentioned earlier during the podcast, like how I kept a spreadsheet and basically just begged developers like, please do this for us. This is not really trying to be mean towards anyone, but the writing request for would go largely ignored.
Sure.
That's fine, because it's other people's sets and it's not really something that needs to be done right now. But yeah, requests were piling up, and I guess the staff and QA saw that, and they were like, Nepiki, you've been doing so much for the team. You've made so many improvements. You've changed the entire team from what it was. We trust you with this. And that's basically how it ended up getting the developer role.
It's one of those things that was granted to you just on kind of merit. What went into earning that recognition?
So yeah, like I said, the writing team, I've basically rebuilt it from scratch. Because whenever I saw something that I just didn't like, I would do something about it. Like, We use a spreadsheet from Google to make our changes in. And at the time, we just copied the title and description from the site. And let me tell you, that would take ages. And eventually, someone came with a set of 280 achievements, and I lost it. I was like, no, I am not going to do this. So I learned how to use the API, and I made a generator, and now we don't need to worry about it anymore.
I mean, excellent. You saw a position that needed to be filled. You saw an avenue that needed to be a little bit more constructive, and you decided, screw this, I'm going to do it myself, and you built it. That couldn't be more respectable.
Exactly. I'm like I said, I'm a very responsible person, and I just want to help people, and I want to do it in the best way possible, and not something that I do not enjoy working in. I think that goes for everyone, but I just really took the initiative, like, we have to change this, we have to change that, just to be better, because it didn't work out before.
Right, definitely. I want to draw a little bit more out, a little bit more broad perspective. I kind of want to dig in a little bit on who Nempeke is, the person, the Dutchman. You mentioned you had a handful of siblings, it sounds like you grew up in a technology competent household if they were passing down past generations. What did the early life of Nep look like? Like, how did you interact with technology? What were some of your fond memories of that? Like, did you play games with your family? How did that look?
My family weren't the biggest of gamers. They had a PlayStation 1, and they played the shooter games like Medal of Honor, and they played FIFA. But I was mostly the one who just started gaming a lot and a lot more. Somewhat at the cost of school, which wasn't really that beneficial, but oh well. I guess this is also a good opportunity to talk about my English skills, how I developed them, because of course I am from the Netherlands, and well, we're not really an English-based country.
Sure.
The Netherlands, as a country, didn't really get a lot of translations for games. So I was basically just playing on English every game. Some cartoons weren't translated, so I had to read the subtitles, and that eventually boiled down to me coming into this beautiful online MMORPG called RuneScape.
Oh shit, you learned English from RuneScape, buddy?
I learned English from RuneScape.
That's
yep, exactly.
Beautiful!
Yep, I was thrown into Lumbridge. I was stuck on Tutorial Island for like 2 days because I had no idea what to do. I couldn't read.
Oh no!
And through that game, I learned so much English because I was also in the video making community before I did anything else. So that means that I did hang out in English worlds. We did have Dutch worlds, but I just hang out in the English worlds. And I was also in English clan. But my English was so terrible.
I gotta interrupt you there. Were they just more active to hang out in the English channels, or what was the prerogative there? Because, like, to enter in a realm where you don't even know what the people are saying, like, you have to have an uphill battle. You want to be involved in something more, so I can only imagine it was just because of the activity. Am I right?
Yeah, mostly the activity and the video making, because I wouldn't deny that as a little kid I looked up to these people like, wow, I want to be like them. So I just started hanging around them like, hey, I want to be you,
sure.
So I am here.
Hey, everybody's had those idols. Everybody's had those heroes. Everybody starts from somewhere. I mean, honestly, it's a little bit embarrassing to say, but one of the reasons I wanted to do the podcast, and even as a child, I wanted to be in broadcast. Originally, I wanted to be a newscaster because there was this small meteorologist just in my local known hometown. I'm not going to give his name, just not to dox myself, but all he did was read the weather. And for some reason, as a little 5 and 6 year old kid, I was like, yes, that I need to be reading something on air. That is my calling. So yeah, I can definitely understand having those ambitions, and you see these heroes and you see these people that you want to strive towards, and just going like, I don't care if I have to learn another language to surmount this. I'm going to fucking do it.
Yeah, and I feel absolutely sorry for all those people who had to witness that because my English was so terrible. But yeah, genuinely, it's thanks to them that I am where I am today, because they corrected me on everything. They had the patience. They had the patience to listen to some random 9-year-old kid who didn't know what he was talking about, and they wanted to help. That shaped a lot of my childhood.
Frankly, you know what that means. You will eventually encounter somebody from the Netherlands or from Deutsch-speaking language that has those same ambitions, has had those same strives, and they're going to be that same 9-year-old squeakers. since you were one that was mentored, it'll be up to you to mentor one.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think your contributions at RA, even though we kind of skew towards the, let's say, late 20s, early 30s generation, we do have our community of squeakers. We do have our young listeners to the podcast. I welcome you all the same, but I'm happy to have you here. One thing I can say is look to your older brethren for guidance. Look to those people who have been around for a little bit, more times around the block, for advice. We might be old, our reflexes might not be as good as they used to be, but looking at Nepeke, that's how he learned. And likewise, Nepeke, would you agree you would like to teach somebody in the same vein?
Absolutely. You can also tell that we do that on RetroAchievements because one of our tasks as writing team member is to review sets from developers and junior developers. And since you are such a multilingual community, we have so many people from Brazil, from any other European country, who can't really speak English that well. And that's also part of my duty, is to just help them and make their sets look compliant with what we expect from English-speaking countries. And also at the same time teach them, like, hey, you did this, I would recommend doing that instead.
Sure.
And in future sets, you can see that again. Like, they learned from that. And yeah, it's kind of ironic how I got to learn English. I'm passing that on to others.
It's a good thing to see, honestly. Oddly wholesome. In a community that, it's one of the things that I would like to see more often, but this community doesn't seem to have wholesome moments too much. We try to be professional. We try to be standardized. We're looking to get to a more leveled portion of standardization, and we're still striving on what that looks like. But knowing that there's still wholesome moments out there and levels of connection, that's encouraging. We have a little bit of RA that still is community building, that still is trying to be that wholesome nature, and it's good to see out.
Yeah, if I had to tell you about the amount of times a junior developer thanked me for looking at a set and doing it in like the most wholesome way, like they cannot speak English that well, but they try to thank me from the deepest gratitude they have. It's just completely wholesome. I love it. That's why I do this. That's why every day I stand up and like, I'm going to do some writing because of these people. They are so happy with what I do for them. They reach out for help, they get the help they want, and they're just really happy.
Honestly, I couldn't agree more. That's what keeps the podcast rolling. The comments that come in, people who would just get a little bit of interest or a little bit of learning knowledge from listening to an episode, it feels very rewarding. And I can't imagine what it is to have somebody try to run something through Google Translate just to communicate to you that, like, hey, I really do appreciate what you've done and what you do. But I want to dig in a little bit more on the writing team and its specifics, its nitty-gritty. After you've taken the lead, after you've kind of started to shape it to your own vision, after you've started to tailor it to what you want it to do, what does it look like when submitting something to the writing team? What does it look like when applying to the writing team? What does it look like when something gets approved by the writing team? Take me through this whole process.
All right, so recently, earlier this year, I expanded the team because I was doing a lot of work, and eventually it just became too much work, so I introduced more people to the team.
Sure.
And what I have done right now, for example, is within our team I've set up a learning environment, so people claim games, then I review them when they're done, then I implement it, and this is a process that keeps going. And this is also what we do for people who reach out to us, like, hey, I want to rewrite the set, and then I just give them a sheet like, here you go. Go do your best, and when you're done, we'll go look at it together, see if there's any feedback I have.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll just go implement it as well, and they can see their work of their fruits, they can see it on the side.
So what do some of these changes look like? If you could pick out a couple examples, and you don't have to be super specific, but let's say the most egregious, like, oh God, this needs writing team's attention. What do some of these submissions look like? What would a writing team member submit to you to be like, hey, we got to change this?
What I would usually see are those descriptions that do not clearly portray what has to be done to the user. So I get a lot of submissions of descriptions that are have a lot of conditions that just, when you read them, they turn into word soup, or they're unclear. Like they have symbols like equal sign, you have to do this and that. And I feel it's such important to just make it clear to anyone from any place in the world, to just tell them like, hey, you have to do this. And if they do not know English and they throw it into a translator, they would understand still what has to be done. And we have a lot of those cases where descriptions just aren't up to snuff.
Mm.
And they get tickets and developers have to fix them, but there's nothing wrong with the achievement. It's just the description that's wrong. And I feel that a good description can just save those developers the work from tickets because they don't need them when the description is correct.
Right. It's not the logic that is broke. They're failing to describe accurately what they need the player to do.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned some kind of symbols, equal signs, and that kind of things. Are those typically what you see in description cases where things aren't written appropriately?
Yeah, we see those a lot. We also see the difficulty being in a weird position of the description, for example. A controversial take is the brackets and the parentheses.
Oh, permissibles, yes.
Yeah, sometimes they are good, sometimes they are bad, and we just try to get the best in between. Like, hey, you can use them here, but don't use them here because it's unnecessary and just cause confusion.
Have you guys found a level of standardization yet? It's something that where, it's hard to say like brackets can't be used ever, but there's definitely some cases where brackets would be somewhat beneficial. I almost feel like it would be challenging to find standardization in your team. Is that something you were able to accomplish, or is that something you're still looking to do?
Yeah, that's something we're still looking to do because, like you said, it's just such a global usage that you can't really standardize, and maybe you also shouldn't standardize. That's kind of the issue. Because it just fits better in some scenarios than in others. And we see it a lot that people just still want to use them because they do not know how to rewrite it into a description in a single sentence.
Sure.
And that makes complete sense. I completely understand. So it's something that I am still struggling with, that a lot of people are struggling with, and it's definitely something that I hope we can one day agree on, like, hey, this is the best way to approach this.
So it's almost a case-by-case basis, but you're trying to have some kind of theme behind it, though standardization is a little bit impossible because the varying nature of the games that are offered at RA just are a little bit impossible to quantify towards a complete standardization. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's fairly accurate, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's also what I've been teaching my new members, like, this is what I personally do. But I do want you guys to give feedback if you do not agree with it, just so I can learn it, just so everyone can learn from it, and just so we can together come to a conclusion like, hey, this is the best to do.
Absolutely. As another team lead, it's one of those things that I try to promote myself is we don't have a complete standard. We do try to test the best of a player's perspective ability, but I do appreciate everybody's team member that comes aboard who can provide a unique perspective. Everybody's going to be able to play different genres and different games to different ability levels. So by bringing different people aboard the team, we can get different perspectives that we're looking to break those games. And likewise, I imagine you will get different perspective on the writing team for people who see a different opportunity or people who can read things differently or people who approach the situation from a differing perspective.
Yeah, exactly. We got people from all across the world. Most of them aren't even English first language, and they just want to join the writing team and have their own perspectives on how they do it in their country. And yeah, it gives a lot of different viewpoints, like how can we combine this with each other to make a comprehensive, complete guidelines that we can all use, are satisfied with, and that we can pass on to developers like, hey, this is how we want to do it.
I mean, that's fantastic news. Do you guys get a lot of representation from outside the English-speaking language, or do you guys get a lot of applicants from folks who are looking to apply to the writing team that aren't native to English?
Yeah, I would say that we have a lot of varied applications, like we do have a lot of English people on our team, but we also have a lot of people from other countries. And it varies depending on who applies. It's very mixed, I would say.
All right, so you have a wide diversity. Have you noticed any specialization amongst the folks that want to join? Let's say, have you noticed that any group has been more particular to any aspect of the writing team, or have you noticed it fairly spread across the board?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that we have some people who specialize in coming up with unique titles, because that's also one of our work, is to bring new flair to sets that have achievement titles like Beat Stage 1, Beat Stage 2. We certainly have some people who have so much creativity boiling up that makes so many interesting titles that make the entire set just feel new. And there are definitely people in my team who specialize in that. I would say I'd also do that.
I mean, any shout-outs that you want to give for your folks?
So a lot of my new members like Kibiron and Gamer097, they have been very active. Ravmac as well. They have all been very active and just handling writing plans, handling requests. And of course, my older members as well, Yazarus and Plugmeister, they have also been very active. Yazarus is actually the oldest member, or at least the member who has been with the team the longest, who I always considered the writing team leader before me. And I have massive respect for him because his skill with English is beyond anything I can ever accomplish, I would say.
I wouldn't sell yourself too short. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Either way, you have a lot of good people on board. You have a lot of good team members. Where do you see the writing team going in the future?
So I've also talked about this earlier, is that the writing team didn't really have any permissions on site. This is actually going to change because I don't know if this is a secret or not. I don't think it is. But there is a permission matrix in work.
Oh, the web matrix. Yes.
Yeah. And so eventually all of my team members will also gain access to changing titles and descriptions. So it's not just me who does like 5 million a day and I can spread it out to all the members. And I think that's going to be very beneficial because that means that we can spread out our work more across more members. And that just gives us more time as well to focus on all the stuff. And of course, I would say our most important task is to help the Unity developers and also developers themselves. Because for code reviews especially, they have been redirected to us if they see a set that doesn't really have correct English. So it's my goal to get them fixed as quickly as possible, just so the code review can continue, just so the queue goes faster. Just so everything goes faster, and that's also for developers, they can push out the sets faster.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's one of those tandem efforts. As the playtest lead, it's one of those things that the objective we were given when I took the helm was to try to make sure that the juniors were ready in a more capable ability when their CR time came around. When code review came around, they didn't want to be helping with simple breaks. They wanted to be helping with optimizing logic. And that all came down to the root of we want to be doing things faster. We want to be doing things more efficiently. We want to be putting out a reliable product that is more stable. We want to be putting out something that can be enjoyed. We want to be putting out something that can be trusted. We want to be putting something out that can be secure and reliable. And all these things that you're describing both play in tandem with what I'm doing. And all these discussions that I've had with other numerous members of RA who operate as cogs in this massive machine, it seems we're all just trying to get a little bit more efficient.
Exactly. We all know how long the queue is for junior developers. If I can be of some form of help to make that go faster, so if I can help junior developers out as fast as possible, that would just be great. Everyone profits in the end.
Exactly. I mean, the players get a good game to play. The junior developer has themselves set up for a good code review in both the writing capacity, the playtest capacity. The logic might be a little bit more sound. We're not here to discourage you. We're not here to tell you that you're doing anything wrong. We're here to improve the end result for the community as a whole.
And I think that's very important to note because we do not want to discourage people. Like, we do not want to criticize you like your stuff is bad. We just want to help you. That's all that we are here for. Use us as many times as you want. We are there for you. And please do it.
I want to bring a parallel. Nepiki that registered in 2015. The Nepiki who was angry that their yellow mastery wasn't quite the same. The Nepiki who was there in 2015 wouldn't quite have responded to criticism or feedback should they have chose to contribute in the same way that the Nepiki who registered in 2020 would have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's one of those things that I want to draw attention to. If you are one of our younger users, if you are one of our younger listeners, at RA, by all means, I welcome you here. I want you to be involved, enjoy yourself, have a good time. But don't be discouraged if the immediate adventures you put forth. If you're only in the server for a week, if you've only been around and you're very fresh-faced and you're eager and you're hungry, and I understand, everybody is. I don't fault you, but give it time. Give it time. It's going to be hard to contribute to a grand vision when you only are just very recently exposed to it. You have to take the time to understand the vision before you can contribute to it. Would you agree?
Absolutely. If you can see an opportunity to contribute, I would go for it. Just don't let anyone tell you like, no, this won't be useful or this or that. If you can see an opportunity to contribute, go for it. Contact anyone who you want to contact. Everyone's willing to help you out. Just go for it. 100%.
I've yet to meet a community of more receptive, more willing participants who want to see you succeed. But folks, we have a lot more to cover on the Retro Achievements Podcast, and we are going to do all that right when we get back.
playtime is ended.
Come at me with everything you've got, understand?
Your time is extended!
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Retro Achievements Podcast. RetroAchievements Podcast at gmail.com for all listener mail questions or inquiries to be read out on air. We've had Nepiki. We've been diving in on the writing team. We've been diving in on their experience through RA from 2015 to 2020 to now. We've been diving in on what it means to reshape the writing team. We've dove in on what it means to join it. We figured out a little bit about infinite backlog. I still want to ask a couple more questions about that because it's a very interesting community to bridge. And we've talked about that as well, trying to figure out more avenues to bring traffic to the RA community. It's a beautiful thing to see. Nep, I'm thrilled to have you here, man. It was a good time. It was a great discussion. It was one of those things I was happy to have you on. We wanted to do it for a while. We've been trying to schedule this thing for a minute. What do you think about being here? How do you feel? What are your thoughts on this episode?
Well, as for who I am always a bit nervous, and you can probably hear that in my voice, but I was thrilled to be here. It's super exciting. I always wanted to be on the podcast, and when you invited me, like, hey, Nep, should we do an episode? I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
Signed up right away. Let's go. I'm scared, but I don't care.
No doubt. Instant reply. I'm here.
As I was mentioning, applying to the writing team is something easy. Applying to get on your board is something easy. What would you tell the listeners out there who might be a little bit fresh, might be a little bit new to the RA community, but want to contribute, might have that quiver of arrows that can supply the ammunition needed for the writing team? What would you talk to these people about and encourage them to do?
So what I would say for the writing team is I do have applications sent out every now and then, but you can always contribute whenever you want. Like I said earlier, if you want to rewrite a set because you think it's not up to standards, you don't have to be a member to do that even. You can just ask me like, hey, Nep, I want to rewrite a set. Can you give me a sheet? I will give you a sheet. We will work with it together. I will give you advice. And hey, maybe if it ends up so surpassing, positions are always open on the writing team.
I mean, it's beautiful to hear.
But of course, you don't have to join the team if you don't want to. You can just contribute whenever you want, and we will get something rolling.
It's beautiful to hear. It's one of those things where you're open to contribution. It's not so much gatekeeping, but just like, hey, are you actually doing what we're looking for people to provide? One thing I did want to ask a little bit more questions on, though, is the infinite backlog. I mean, I don't mean to sell RA short, but it's such a larger community. It's such a larger involvement. There's so many more registered users. I think that's just due to the nature of their platform. They're not necessarily trying to be a social platform. They're not trying to talk to each other, whereas we definitely communicate. We cross bridges. We bridge teams. We try to get to one cohesive structure and nature amongst one another. I would like to think we're all working towards one common goal, whereas Infinite Backlog seems to be run by a lot of admins and are doing their own thing, and the users will comply. But I am very happy to have their involvement all the same. What are some of the differences that you would see between these two communities?
So I think this goes back to all the days of Backloggery. Backloggery was like the biggest backlogging site of them all because there was not really any competition. And people just use that for themselves. It's completely personal, and that's also what Infinite Backlog is. They just wanted to track their games. Did I complete this or not? What did I think of it? All that.
Sure.
And Infinite Backlog, when compared to RetroAchievements, where it's a community that works towards one single goal, Infinite Backlog is just for your personal goal, just how you want to treat it. Like the challenges. If you want to set a game to complete it, even if it's technically not on the completed standards, like, hey, you beat Super Mario World, for example, but you didn't get all the Dragon Coins, but you still want to set this completed, well, yeah, go for it. I mean, it's your backlog. Nobody's going to stop you. If you consider the game completed, you are satisfied, you have seen everything you want from the game, that's all on you. It's your personal thing, and that's what makes Infinite Backlog different from RetroAchievements. Just because it's your own personal space. Like, I want to track these games, I want to review these games, I want to list them, do challenges, whatever else. It's just for yourself. There's no ranking involved. You can do as many challenges if you want. Of course, if you do see cheating, you're still going to get untracked, so don't do it. But yeah, it's just do your own thing, and that's what makes it beautiful.
I mean, it felt kind of enjoyable. When I was signing up for the website, just in preparation for this episode, I noticed that it, like you're saying, it let me customize a lot of my options. I could do them as uncompleted, beaten, 100%ed or like fully unlocked and mastered, it seemed to allow the user a lot more customization and accessibility. And that's a good feature to be had. And I would agree. It's a huge differentiation between what RA is and Infinite Backlog. RA is to measure yourself up against other players, whereas Infinite Backlog, as you mentioned several times, is to measure yourself up and make sure that you're playing your own damn games.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need to worry about the ranking. Just play your games. Of course, there is a leaderboard, but it's not really that important. It's not going to benefit you anything or something. It's just do your own thing, have fun. That's all. Exactly.
From what I've seen, just in poking around for a couple hours there, the leaderboard isn't even that focused on. You're literally there just to have fun. The leaderboard almost seems more representative of who wanted to spend more money and buy games that could be unlocked for easy points.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate, yeah. Unfortunately, before I came to RA, I was also a Steam Achievement Hunter, but I eventually just stopped doing that because Steam is exactly like you were describing.
Exactly.
There are so many games you buy, and then you start them up, and 1 minute later you have 6,000 achievements, and congratulations, you did such a good job. I'm so proud of you.
Wahoo, buddy.
Wahoo.
Yeah. It's fodder. It's fodder.
Exactly.
But one of the things I did want to ask is, what does interacting with the Infinite Backlog community as a mod look like? What does that look like in that capacity? Do you ever engage on those functions? Do you just kind of hold that title because you are committed to retro achievements? Or do you actually engage over there? And do you hold some clout? What does that look like?
No, I am actually a moderator. I do handle the game linking and also the challenges that we do with the game series that I mentioned earlier. And just like with the writing team, I just try to help out as many people as possible. When they have a question, they come to our Discord like, hey, this doesn't work or this game doesn't link. I'll try to get it resolved.
Okay, so you're honestly the same way that you are over here as you are over there.
Yep, I just want to help people.
Exactly, you have a good... Nep, I've got a yellow flag on the field because I'm not seeing any red flags, and that's kind of a yellow flag in itself. What the fuck? Come on, man, you can't be this cool.
I can try to bring up my Badacky attitude and not do that, but...
Did you just call it Badacky?
Yeah, it's Badacky. That's my evil twin, Badacky.
Oh my god. I feel like I need a whole nother episode for this shit. All right, before we wrap up for today, you got to tell me a little bit about Badacky. Give me a couple of we're not so proud of these moments. What did Badacky do?
Like I mentioned earlier, the 2015 era of Netpicky wasn't really... the brightest. Like how I rage quit because Pokemon Yellow got a revision. Even though at the time I was like very high ranked even. I was like top 300 when I was looking at the Wayback Machine. Like, oh no, I was actually pretty high.
No shit!
And I rage quit over something petty like that. And I was like,
wow!
That's a Badacky moment. And when
that is a Badacky moment.
And I remember when I proposed the guides, like, hey, we should have guides. And people were like, yeah, but we have a lot of other stuff we have to do first. And I was like, no, but I want this.
I'm gonna dig my heels and fuck you, I'm bad.
And that's so funny to look back on because it's not something I'm going to deny, like, oh, that was so stupid. No, I did that. But it's funny to see how much I've changed over the years.
I mean, that's aging. That's maturity. That's growing. That's developing. Like, we talk a lot about development here at Retro Achievements, but like to understand that actual word, sure, you're developing sets, you're developing games, but have you failed to develop yourself? Have you failed to look inward and understand that you too need to progress? You have sets you need to accomplish. You have accomplishments that you need to achieve. You have goals that you need to make sure are perfected. And these are the things that you're spending time mastering these games. And while I encourage you, and I don't want to fault anybody who is enjoying their leisure time, everybody needs to take time to mature, to develop, to become themselves. And if you're a listener who's in their late teens, early teens, hell, I'd even argue early 20s, you've got time to develop. You will develop more. You will achieve more. And that is far beyond just the retro achievement capacity.
Yep, that's what I always say as well. Just accept your past. There's nothing wrong with it. We all did stupid stuff. Just grow from it and look at where you are today. You've improved. We all improved.
That's all we can hope for.
Exactly.
But Nep, I'm glad to have you here today. This was a fantastic time. A great discussion, a great episode. I think we got a good perspective on what the writing team means. I think we got an even greater perspective on who Nepiki is and how the ham-ha says hello.
Ham-ha.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, there we go. The ham-ha quota has been met.
But I'm thrilled to have you here, man. Any final thoughts? Any final closing statements? Anything you want to give listeners? Any wrap-up thoughts that you would just really want to send somebody home with?
Well, first of all, I was, of course, very happy to be here. I mentioned it earlier as well, but I'm just really happy to be on the podcast. I've mentioned it a few times as well. Just if you want to contribute, there are multiple ways to do it. You don't have to become a developer. You don't have to become an artist. There's so many different ways. And strive for that and make connections, because we are all one big group that wants to help each other. That's the best part about a community. Don't let that stop you. Even if you do something that's not directly related to the site, like you can do RA guides that I do. There's so much you can do, and yeah, don't let yourself hold back. Don't let other people tell you like you cannot do that. If you want to do something and you think it's beneficial to the community, go for it. Don't let it stop you.
My God, I couldn't agree more. There is nothing at all that is stopping you from trying to put your best idea to pavement. If you truly think you have something to contribute to the RA community, you should try to develop it. It doesn't matter if it's a set. It doesn't matter if it's the podcast. It doesn't matter if it's whatever, fill in the blank. If you have an idea, you should develop that idea if you truly think it's worth developing. There's a lot of things worth value here that we haven't seen yet that a lot of people with new perspective could provide. And frankly, it would be disappointing if you don't try to provide that fresh new perspective. But either way, this has been the Retro Achievements Podcast. One more time, retroachievementspodcast@gmail.com for all listener mail, all inquiries or questions. You could be read out on air. This has been Time Crush. And I've had my guest here, a lovely, fantastic, couldn't be happier to have you here, dude, Nepiki.
Ham-ha.
Last words, ham-ha.
Ham-ha.
That's
are my
all.
last words.
And this has been the Retro Achievements Podcast. We will see you all next time.